Hello and welcome to episode 27 of 50 Women Over 50, a podcast for women whose personal confidence is born of experience. I'm your host, Sherrilynne Starkie. In this podcast series, I'm interviewing 50 women from all walks of life who are over 50 years of age about what they've learned by this decade so we can all learn from them. Today, I'm welcoming to the show author Rona Maynard, whose successful career in publishing culminated as the editor of Chatelaine magazine. Soon after retiring, her husband talked her into rescuing a dog, which proved to be Rona's muse. She recently published her book, a memoir entitled Starter Dog, My Path to Joy, Belonging, and Loving This World. I'm thrilled to welcome Rona to the show. All right, so tell me about your 50th birthday.
It was a lunch break from Chatelaine, where I was halfway through my term as editor, and I tripped out with a bunch of friends from the office and had a very merry gathering at a then fashionable restaurant that doesn't exist anymore. And what's striking about that day today is that it was kind of a harbinger for things to come. One of the women could not make it because her father had recently died and she was overcome with grief. Yes. She thought that she would be able to come, but she wasn't. Another has since become very ill, and a third has died.
Oh, no.
And you do not think about these things very much. Well, I didn't think about them at all. It was just a happy day. But as I look back on the happiness and the warmth and the conviviality and the glasses of wine, I see how fragile that joy was, that the moments that you have with people, you must savor, because who knows if there's going to be another one. But when you're caught up in the hurly-burly, you don't think about this. You think there's going to be an infinity of gatherings just like this. And there won't be. I don't want to sound bleak, because actually there's a joy at the heart of it.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing I'm learning from these calls is really to almost everyone has talked at some point about the importance of the relationships, the people that you have relationships with, the people that you love and that you're friends with, and how they become more important to you as you get into your later decades, and how you should kind of start to prioritize them. And it's funny you started the call with that comment, because as I'm approaching my 60th birthday, I have to say I am looking into the next decade with kind of this cold fear based on what you were just saying. I just think that the next decade is going to be a lot of change along the lines of what you're saying. Like I'm worried that I'm going to lose good friends. I know that some of the people that are in my life now are going to drift away, and, you know, life is going to change a lot, I think. And kind of steeling myself for that.
Well, it's strange the way it creeps up on you. Mm-hmm. I'm now 73. So I have been in this stage of life for a long time, where the network that I have built, one face and one shared confidence at a time, has a lot of holes in it.
Yeah.
And I have committed myself to making new friendships. And some of these are with younger people. This has been a joy, but I take it very seriously, because we truly cannot count on people being there forever, and we must take the time out to be with them. I'm going to give you an example. Today, my sister-in-law is coming to Toronto on the train to join me at the Leonard Cohen exhibition at the AGO. She's a big Cohen fan. Now, it is very inconvenient for me to go to the AGO with my sister-in-law today, because there are so many things I have to do.
Right.
But if we don't go today, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
There's a big danger at this stage of life that you're going to say, oh, I'm going to do that someday.
Mm.
I'll get around to that someday. The things that you file under someday
Mm.
have a way of slipping into the never file
Yeah. That's
before you know it.
So how do you go about striking up new friendships?
Well, there are lots of ways. When I meet a woman through an organization that we both belong to, I can suggest that we get together outside our gatherings. I always take people up on their invitations to go to their parties and their special things. And the virtual world is very good for striking up friendships too, I find.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very active on Facebook, Instagram, a little less so. But there are all kinds of opportunities where you can invite someone into your real world. So now, as I am publishing a new book, Start a Dog, I see an opportunity to invite some people who I would like to know better to join me on a Start a Dog walking tour. And these people, by and large, are younger, a little younger.
Yes.
And the dog and I can meet them, and we can ramble around the places in the neighborhood that are part of the story. I think it'll be a lot of fun. We can
I think so.
go to one of Toronto's better coffee shops, sit under a tree. You're coming into the best time of year for this kind of thing.
So I don't have a dog. I have a grand dog.
Oh, that qualifies. You'll be pressed into dog sitting if you haven't been already.
Oh, I have. But women of my acquaintance that have dogs have made a lot of friends just from having dogs, because you're out in your own neighborhood and you're meeting people in the park and on the street, and you have a common interest right there on the street with you. And it's a great way to make friends, I'm told. Has that been your experience?
Not so much actual friendships, because my dog is not good in dog parks. I cannot take him to dog parks. He steals balls. And that's where a lot of these friendship happens.
Okay.
But I do have many heartwarming encounters on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these are with homeless people.
Right. So you live right in downtown Toronto?
Oh, yes. I live 2 blocks from St. Lawrence Market.
Okay.
Right. And I meet tourists too.
Was there anything about, going over the hill past your 50th birthday that you found surprising about life?
Well, I will say that turning 60 was a bit of a challenge for me, because I had loved my 50s so much. That was a very good decade for me. I hit my stride in my career as editor of Chatelaine. I wrote my first book, and then I didn't know what was next. The first book came out when I was, I think, 57.
Right.
And people said, oh, what are you going to do now? What's your next book? Well, I didn't have one. I didn't have an idea. I truly felt that I was marking time, floundering even.
Right.
And after being in the corporate world for so long and holding a big job, I had learned to measure myself in terms of accomplishments.
Yes.
Have we won awards? How many copies have we sold at the newsstand? How are we doing against our competition? It was all very measurable. And I complained sometimes about the yardsticks, and I would laugh about deliverables. It was always a very bitter laugh. But once those things were gone, I did not know who I was anymore, because when you are being judged against your accomplishments, you say, how am I doing? And then you say, well, I had a record month at the newsstand.
Mm.
Or we won Magazine of the Year at the magazine awards. And in every business, there are things like that. There are the equivalents to that. And then it's just you. And you are the one who makes your day meaningful. It is an opportunity to ask yourself, not how am I doing, but how am I feeling?
Interesting.
What did I love about this day?
And yet you did pick up the pen again and you wrote your new book. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how you came back to the desk that way?
Oh, it was a very difficult process. I have written off and on all my life. And I didn't want a dog. My husband talked me into it, and I loved him. So I said yes. I mean, I love my husband. I didn't love the dog, or didn't think I could love the dog. It was, in fact, a head over heels infatuation once Casey arrived. And I started telling little stories on Facebook about my day with Casey. People liked these stories.
Yes.
And they asked for more of them, and they shared them with their friends. And this community started to grow around me and Casey. A former colleague of mine, whom I greatly respect, said, Rona, you should do a book about these. They are not just Facebook posts. They are the building blocks of something bigger. But it took me a long time to figure out what the shape of this book would be. And at that time, I didn't think of myself as a writer.
Right.
I thought I'm somebody who writes when she has something to say. So I had to find the clarity and the sense of purpose to say, yes, I'm a writer, and this is the story that I am going to tell. What I went through with writing is transferable to lots of other pursuits. I've seen people, for instance, take up ceramics, but you must commit to it.
Yeah.
You have to say, this is important. And it doesn't matter whether anybody else thinks it's important.
That's kind of how I feel about my podcast.
Yes. Well, there will sometimes be that killjoy who is going to say, well, why are you doing this if you're not making any money at it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so much more to life than that. At this stage, it is my privilege not to have to worry about whether my book makes money or not. I hope it does. It would be lovely for this book to make some money.
And where can people get it? Is it on Amazon?
Oh, yes, definitely. You can order it on Amazon and probably get it in a matter of a couple of days. You can order it from your favorite independent bookseller. And I am starting to go into bookstores and sign and paw print copies of the book. I've had an adorable little rubber stamp made with my dog's life-size paw. And it was not easy to figure out how to do that.
I think you're going to have a bestseller. I feel very confident that you are.
Well, I, of course, hope you're right. but that is not why I wrote it.
Yeah, yeah.
And people in my line of work cannot help but measure ourselves against those who are on the New York Times bestseller list,
Yeah.
or on Oprah, or Steven Spielberg has called. And that happens to very few people.
Yes.
So you learn to take profound pleasure in the reactions of actual readers who tell you how your book amused, entertained, surprised, consoled them,
Yes.
all of the above. And I don't care whether it is making music or writing a book or making fabric art. There is that relationship that's formed when whenever you've made goes out into the world and people find it.
And how is Casey enjoying all the attention?
As long as there are treats, he will work for treats. A photographer came photographing for the cover of Reader's Digest, and this was so arduous. We worked for hours to get that shot.
Good. And when does that issue of Reader's Digest come out?
It is probably on the stands right now, if it hasn't already been replaced by the new issue. It's quite adorable. But, a dog does not care how he is perceived in the world. A dog does not know how he looks, and he does not mind if he is not looking his best. A dog never looks at his reflection and asks, does this harness make me look fat? It's such good practice for a human.
Yeah, I agree. Only humans would do that kind of thing.
Oh, I do it all the time. I can't help it.
What are you most hopeful about for the future?
I am hopeful that I can go deeper into writing and savor the very special delights of writing while old. And I do say that now that I am old, I make no bones about it. I wanted to call myself middle-aged for the longest time, tried to get away with it, but I really can't anymore. And the beautiful thing about making any kind of art later in life is that nobody expects you to build this amazing career out of it.
Yeah.
And people will understand that you have earned this opportunity to do something that brightens and lightens you. After all those years of being a teacher or a lawyer or a construction worker or whatever it was you did.
What advice would you give your 30-year-old self?
Lighten up.
I love it.
Well, when I was 30, it was a very different time.
Yes.
There was so much exhilaration about women in the workforce. And there was a raft of media stories about, quote, women taking the workforce by storm. And I was one of those women. I truly felt that we were the vanguard.
You were.
Bright-faced, briefcase-toting people with our shiny pumps riding the subway to work. And boy, were we going to prove ourselves. We were so very motivated, my generation. We were the ones who were going to stay late and really make them glad that they hired us. We gave away, I think, too much of ourselves. I did, certainly, because it was all so terribly exciting. And I did shortchange my private self rather badly. I did not know anymore how to have fun because I thought work was where I went to have fun. I had a young child, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went home at the end of the day, things were kind of chaotic and the house was a mess. And I had to throw dinner on the table, had to fund our son's homework. And it was so hard to keep track of it all amid the frayed tempers, because my husband's stay was even longer than mine. It was not a pleasure to be home.
Yes.
But it was a pleasure to be at work because, as a friend of mine put it, at work, things work. People know what they're supposed to do, and they do it uncomplainingly. You don't have arguments in the office about who should have filled out those forms or who should have designed the layout by 5 o'clock. It's interesting how that whole way of viewing life is completely gone now. I don't think that today's 30-year-olds can fall into that trap.
Yeah.
Because they know that work is very provisional, that they will be moving from job to job, that it is dangerous to give your employer any loyalty. They are anxious, often with good reason, about being replaced by a bot, in part
more so
or wholly. And this is all deeply unsettling. And yet, I think it is a corrective that we've had coming to the idea that we should build our lives around our work and hand ourselves over to an employer.
Yeah, I agree. I think the younger generation of women have got that part of it figured out. And so do the younger generation of men. Like they're a lot more involved at home than when you and I were young working mothers. Like I always, my joke is that they said you could have it all, Sherrilynne. And I did all the work, all the debt, all the responsibility. Yeah, I had it all. My 2 daughters are in this cohort. They understand the importance of sharing the responsibility and getting the dads involved. And I can see from the younger people in my family that the men are just as hands-on with children as the women and involved in all the carpooling and everything. I think it's a really good sign.
I saw the most wonderful moment while I was riding the streetcar one day. There were 2 young men, early 30s, and they had little babies at home. Yeah. And one of them was exulting to the other about the joy of holding his baby daughter in the shower.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
And holding her against his chest and feeling the warm water envelop both of them. I thought, what a sweet moment.
Yes. So what are you reading or enjoying on Netflix or doing to amuse yourself these days?
Well, I am very, very late to this party, but I have become a shameless follower of Seinfeld.
Oh, you are late.
I am very, very late. Yeah, I would never watch network TV back in the glory years of Seinfeld. But I think it is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
It is such a delicious satire of adulthood among people who can't grow up.
And what you were saying about Seinfeld, this is one of the advantages of streaming technology is we get to go back and revisit these phenomenons from yesteryear, because I, like you, I also missed Seinfeld because I lived in the UK when Seinfeld was a thing and I didn't watch it. And when I moved back to Canada, it struck me that there was a lot of cultural references just in dialogue with, friends and family and stuff that referred to this television show that I had no idea what we were talking about. So
people still refer to it.
yeah.
I heard a politician recently refer to George Costanza. And if you've never watched it, you don't know the particular odiousness of George Costanza.
Yeah.
It has dated, but in a very charming way. There are entire episodes that revolve around telephones.
Yeah.
And TV Guide.
Oh yeah, that stuff. Yeah.
I loved Afterlife with Ricky Gervais.
Yeah. Oh my God, such a great writing.
And it's the other thing that I like about it is a serious look at growing older and the world disrupting experience of losing somebody. What do you do when that person is gone?
Yeah.
And it is both deeply sad and very, very funny.
Yeah.
And it's hopeful because you watch the Ricky Gervais character start to rebuild his life. He finds a sense of purpose again, and he builds a little community who encircle him with their support and their affection. And he's got his dog.
Well, I was going to say that I think that the thing that you have in common with him is the love and friendship. I got to say the word friendship he has with his dog.
Well, for many people, the dog is the most important relationship in their life.
Yeah.
For some, it's a cat. Doesn't have to be a dog.
Right.
But a dog does not judge. A dog is always with you. A dog has routines that organize your day and will not let you just lie in your bed and love. A dog will make sure that you get out the door.
True. Very true. I have people in my life whose dogs have saved their lives.
I believe it.
Yeah. Is there an app you couldn't live without?
Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
I am a very avid Facebook user, and this is not a common thing for anyone to say. Facebook is widely scorned for completely understandable reasons. There's a whack of advertising, and there have been security breaches. People really do distrust it. And yet I have built real relationships on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
I built a book on that platform. And when the time came to send that book into the world, I was able to run it past friends that I had made there. And while these relationships are different from my real world friendships, they're not at all shallow.
I lived for several years on an island, and it was social media that made that whole time of my life palatable because I was able to build relationships for myself and for my business online. That was right when the whole blogging trend started, and then Twitter came along and Facebook came along a couple of years after that. And it was only through, I've made such great friends, built such great business relationships, all of it through Twitter and Facebook, less so the other ones, but also LinkedIn. Actually, LinkedIn a lot more in the last 10 years has been a lot more important. But yes, when people, and I should tell you that my practice is social media. That's my specialism. But when people trash social media for all the things that they trashed it about, I always bring this up and say, yes, but let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater here on this. Look at all the benefits that this kind of social interaction has brought to society, and is still bringing to society every single day. It isn't perfect.
No.
There are problems that we need to work on and fix, but walking away is a mistake, and, over-regulating to the point where there ceases to be useful, I think would be a mistake, or where innovation dies, I think would be a mistake. We really do need to just kind of hold on to it and keep working with it and trying to, as a community, pull together to fix what doesn't work and make it better.
Well, I've met one of my best friends online.
Right.
And we actually do see each other once in a while. I traveled to Austin for her birthday party a couple of years ago, and I almost didn't go because I thought, well, it's far to go for a birthday party and it's going to be expensive. And then I realized, how many opportunities am I going to have to do something like this? But it gets back to what I said earlier about someday, about filing things under someday. You cannot file somebody's big birthday under someday. You either go or you file it under never. And my friend is a cancer survivor. She is in excellent health, but you never know at our age when that could change. And rather than be morbid about that, I say, well, let's just enjoy all the time that we can seize together.
This has been 50 Women Over 50, a podcast for women whose personal confidence is born of experience. I want to thank my guest, Rona Maynard, for spending an hour with me to record this show, in which every single moment was filled with insight and wisdom. I've already been implementing some of what I learned from Rona in my own life, and I have had a very busy Easter weekend as a result. Please see the show notes to find the links that you need to connect with Rona online, and for more information about her new book and some of the organizations and resources that we discussed on today's show. Join me again for next week's show, when I will welcome journalist and voice coach Susan Murphy, who shares a little about her journey into the next stage of her life following her husband's death by suicide. That's next week. In the meantime, please drop me a rating or a review on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's connect and create a whole community of wise women over 50 by sharing a link to this show with your friends and connections. See you next time on the 50 Women Over 50 podcast. I'm your host, Sherrilynne Starkie.